Okay, so here we are, Monday, and see, just exactly, just watch, but yeah. The okay, just thought I'd read a little bit from here. If you have single mind concentration throughout your body, it is known as Nen, and there is no transmigration. In Misogi, one returns to the very beginning. In Budo training, if you're caught up with the selfish thoughts and desires, you will never progress spiritually. Bu is based on selfish thoughts and desires, a false path. A heart with pure Nen results in wonderful, compassionate power, which he says is Nenpi Tenon Riki. That's, of course, a Japanese term. Such concentrated mind power can shatter attacking swords. It is a pure spirit of the gods, the divine energy of emptiness. Use mind power to fight your battles. Okay. However, mind power alone cannot defeat another spirit. You must also capture the actual form of the attack before your eyes and not overlook the present reality. Okay, in some sense, what he's kind of doing right there is kind of giving a sense of where he is, and then issuing kind of a disclaimer. You can sort of have the idea or the aspiration, but then again, there's present reality. And you're dealing with the situation and the pleasant reality, which, is an attacker or even a training exercise with a partner on the mat. It's a present reality. The circle and the triangle work like a rice cake that is kneaded over and over to become solid. Okay. Now, rice cakes, traditional New Year's, you get somebody who's pounding the rice. Okay. And right in rhythm with this, obviously, there's somebody there going like that and gathering, hit again. If you just hit the rice, it's going to scatter. And this person establishes a rhythm. And you can't be, you've got to boom, blend with that rhythm, blend with that rhythm, blend with that rhythm. And if this person is kind of worrying about whether they're going to hit the hand of the person who's doing that, then their rhythm is off. So in a sense, he's just saying, that there's an emptiness, kind of spiritual power, but there's also the present reality. And, that's not a combat situation, but literally you have a partnership with somebody. You're either the person who's gathering the rice together so it can be hit again, or conversely, you're the person that's going to do this in a rhythm. Because if you're off, then this person's going to be off. And if this person's off, that person's going to be off. And so the present reality, requires, like two beings, two energies to work together. And then there's Guru Sensei was, which is also present. In some sense, the gathering and hitting are literally there where and they can also be kind of enlightened or filled with this sort of emptiness he's talking about. And he says something, when that is in the body, then is generated. It's just the idea of it. Then, let's go out and pound and knead and form rice cakes, we're going to be horrible. Or if you start out, we kind of get it because we've seen elders do it. Okay. In other words, when I was in Japan, I was in this small town, relatively speaking, country, southern Japan. So you went through, something that somebody like you saw how the elders did, and then okay, so you had a mold to fit into. You were having to kind of figure it out. Okay? When I was on that, or in situations around the dojo, I had Amo Kojima and Yanasa senseis. They were the elders. So how did you? Not like, okay, I'm going to figure this out. It's like, what do they do? Now there's some thought, well, you said the appropriateness of their timing and the behavior in the present reality. You also began to feel that there was something, they're all direct students of those senses, so not those senses level, but they had some of that inside them that was coming through how they dealt with the present reality. Okay. So that part of it is it's kind of refreshing after a while. Okay. A heart with pure contentment results in wonderful, compassionate power. Such concentrated mind power can shatter attacking swords. Such concentrated mind power can shatter attacking swords. The divine energy of influence. It is the pure spirit of the gods. The divine energy of influence. Now there are my suppositions right here. He's talking about the forces of creation. As they get more original, they become divine. They become kami. Where we are in the present reality is a terrible good statement. The Dosa kind of calls it the human condition. As that kind of settle a little bit, the human condition starts to find itself on the front end. And part of this other thing is just empty. And empty again. The human condition opens up a little bit more. We keep doing that. Maybe we start to catch the whole system to where it starts to kind of, not at a sensitive level, it gives us a little bit of a replica model of what he was doing. And the circle and the triangle work like a rice cake that is kneaded over and over and becomes solid. Offer your beneficial thoughts to the mirror of the gods. Like, for example, in shrines, a lot of times rice cakes are offerings. There's usually a mirror, which is a part of the structure of the shrine. Following the will of the divine, your thoughts is a principle that you guide. In other words, he's laying out a path for us to go from present reality, dealing with it, but finding the finer of it, the more the eye empties, the more of this true nature shows, the more that present reality over a period of this starts to present other dimensions that are not quite so obvious when we're in the present reality. The place where the vapor body and the liquid body are born is called the hollow. All of a sudden he brings in something going, da, da, da. But simply, something. Vapor body, liquid body. the graveyard. He talked about that earlier. There's not much reference to it in Aikido. But, you know, in the biography written by his son, he refers to the Nenokuni, the land of the roots, the underworld. And here he brings into the sense of the graveyard. And the graveyard, a little earlier reference, the way he describes it, is the way old ideas go to die. I'm not really talking here about physical death, but you know, I'm in this present reality in a very limited version of myself. I'll start to open, settle, empty. A lot of what defines me as the I is the old ideas I carry and won't let go of. So, and initially, new ideas come in, which means I'm in a different, better place. Empty again, new ideas. Okay, and on that everyday thing, there's the pounding of the hammer and the kneading of the rice, but there's a rhythm to it. And as I get out of, you know, I'm not saying not out of, but I start to see myself, which a lot of it is letting go of the old ideas. So when you're going into, you know, the those sense that puts it, Bobby, to some degree goes through the graveyard, the underworld, you know, kind of a death of the ego I to get to its next level. And then it's probably another graveyard. There's kind of a rebirth into the next level. And at some point, that present reality is expanded enough because we've opened enough that we're, you know, ideally we're doing some replica model of maybe a pattern that Sensei might have caught on to. Okay, so that's kind of what caught my eye this morning. So let's check in. The RO, yeah, okay, good. So, any thoughts about that? And the other thing is you got rice. You can eat the rice. But the rice cakes, it takes the pounding of the hammer and the gathering of the rice. Then, what happens? Well, prior to that, the rice is prepared in the old style. There's fire generating heat, and you have to let it go for a certain amount of time. So fire, heat, time. It was explained to me by a man named Koichi Barich. Those are yang-izing factors. Heat. Pressure. Time. And then that rice is prepared, and then it goes into the pounding of this and the gathering of that. Okay. Anyway, anybody with a question or anything you might want to comment on this? You know, it's a different cultural thing when it refers to rice cakes. I sort of do that because, you know, we're usually New Year's, my family would get together and do the making of the mochi, right? If you just go to the store and buy them, you miss all the procedure going into it.
Sensei?
Question?
No, I was just going to say, my wife is Japanese American, and
Yeah.
a few years ago before COVID, we actually made mochi the way with the pounding, and I couldn't believe how much work that was. I was like,
Oh, yeah.
that is so much work for that. And you tend to appreciate it a lot more after when you eat it.
Yeah, that's an interesting statement. You know, I mean, really what O-sensei might have been saying, we're just the rice. Gather the rice, heat it. There's time, there's heat, there's pressure. Then you take the rice, and the mounting, and the gathering. And if you've been in that process, it's not just a ready-made rice cake. You're, oh, this is kind of nice. It must be New Year's. You're part of that rice cake's journey, aren't you?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, you know, within that, we have the sense, okay, possible. We're the rice cake. Present reality. There's a pandemic, there's a Delta variant, Omicron variant, there's all this going on here. And there are effects in other areas of your life. And we keep gathering. In other words, it's like, you just beat the rice down, nothing happens. But you keep gathering it. So, yeah, if you, I never made mochi, but having watched it, I have a different appreciation of how it can be. Anybody else right there? So just like, he's bringing in something, that you sort of have to be familiar with this culture. It won't make much sense. Anybody? Okay. One of the things we tried to cover yesterday, actually, at the Mountain View class was water, fire. The question came up. Oh, Sensei's sense of love. And a lot of times what we try to do when we read his words is try to translate what he's saying into what you might call, well, the present reality, which is the human condition. And it's a very grandiose thing. You also notice there's noise outside. The world is like that hammer. It can disrupt, it can disturb, and it can destroy. But there's the equal force of. See, if this predominates just everything, at some point the rice got the pounding for no reason, everything is chaotic. Backbeat, there's that. Backbeat, there's that. Beat, there's that. And O-sensei's term for that, one of them, is Tan Ren. Training, Tan Ren. And Tan Ren has both the connotations of toughening. It's a bunch of little rice things, and then put them together into a rice cake. That's tougher. All those little individual grains coalesce But you eat it, it's a whole different thing. It's a rice cake, not rice. So there's been a refinement. Without this, there's no refinement. So it needs both the gathering and okay. So fire and water, in sensei's terms, there's what's called in Japanese a masatsu, a friction. But fire's over here, water's over there. Fire's going to burn things out, the water's going to flood things over there. There's an attraction. And what happens when that attraction, fire touches water, water touches fire, friction. If the fire overwhelms the water, it burns the water off. If the water drowns the fire, fire goes out. So right there in that friction, that's a little bit like a hammer with a mallet. That pounding. And there's an attraction. Fire to water, water to fire. With that attraction, there's friction. Without the attraction, there's no friction. But the friction can stop this movement. So both are going on. So, whether you're talking about rice cakes or we're talking about fire, water, there's a similarity in there. We're going to get up and move in just a little bit, but anybody with a question, comment, observation so far? Somebody back there, or did I miss it? Okay.
No, you hear me?
Okay. Yes, go on.
I've been, this is lining up very closely with some meditation that I've been doing recently around the experience that power is a lot of work to put together and to hang out with without, like, explosions. Like the tendency, the fire has a tendency to go off and be like burn the things that it wants to burn, and water has a tendency to go off and flood the things that it wants to flood, and rice has a tendency to not get without a lot of work. I don't know what the next words are for that, but this is this idea.
For some reason, the audio or something is just, I'm not catching what you're saying at all. So could you speak a little louder? Or it can come up again, rephrase itself as we go into the rest of the class.
I'm sorry, I forgot that the speaker is also a microphone. Is that better?
Yeah, no, that's much better.
Okay. Hi, cool. Right, that's an interesting metaphor in itself, maybe. But this conversation about rice and rice cakes, fire and water, aligns very closely with the thing that I've been stewing on lately, which is this experience that it's power is a lot of work to have and to hang out with, and it's especially a lot of work to hang out with it all in a way that's kind of sort of relaxed or chill, to actually soak in it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's
Well, one of the things though, Sensei kind of brings us to, right? In some sense, if we do the rice cakes, right? The two things, and there's a balance. If this dominates, the rice just gets squished and it's random, no cakes. All you do is put the rice together and it's not pounded, there's no cakes either. So you see there's actually two mutual forces. And there's a transformation from the grains of rice into a rice cake, the mochi, right? Without the pressure, the friction, doesn't work. Without the gathering or the attraction, doesn't work. So, I think what O-sensei was saying is, when he was talking about the nen and the emptiness, is that we're kind of like rice. And there's movements that we can appreciate, and it's consolidated in us through a type of, or a series of transformational things. And the way he put it is, emptiness through the body is nen. In other words, it's not just the thought about. It's not purely just your physical body. Okay? And, okay. Okay, so I'm going to start out with this. And, if you're going to pound rice, you need something to pound it on. I'm not sure the term for it, and there's rice. You need two people. There's only one person to kind of go, with the mouth, the other person go, boom, right, that's that, and boom, and that's that, boom. And I watched Tikizuchi Sensei do the pounding. He was with somebody else, and it was kind of a training. He said to that person, if you think, you're going to mess up. So it has to just be in the moment. Okay? So. And proper grip. Palm starts the grip. Palm starts the grip. Obviously, I'm just holding here so I can start the grip here. So little finger all the way up to the thumb. Palm, little finger all the way to the thumb. I'm using a lot of power to hold the sword. The sword, if it's an extension of you, it's like, my arm is extended out. I'm holding my arm out after a while. Okay, and we'll just start out with this basic cut. See, if you're going to be pounding rice, you're going to go all the way back here and do that. So you're going to be here, all right? And then boom. See, that's the fire. That's the water. And that's kind of the combustion. Boom, right here. So fire, water, boom. It's not just that much. Fire, water, boom. In class, we go express elevator. No. Trapdoor. Now, the trapdoor express elevator, trapdoor, kind of like the actual synthesis of the two. Okay. Anyway, so that's they can be kind of seen as a tan ren. First part of that, you strengthen your grip, your forearms, strengthen. Okay. And then there's the other half, the refinement. You can just flail away at it. You get something out of it. Okay. Anybody? Simple exercise, just kind of going through the repetitive motion of that cut. Anybody, we've done this before. Old answers are acceptable if you want to speak up.
Yeah, Sensei.
Yeah.
So last Wednesday, you were talking about the moment before the beat,
Yeah.
and I had a really hard time getting that. And then when I do the Bokken, it feels like the moment before the beat is where you're at the top and there's the trap door just before that, and you feel a little bit weightless. That feels like the moment before a beat. So I kind of understand it when I do the Bokken, but in class, I get lost.
Yeah, the word you used that I thought was interesting, weightless. There's a certain area where weightless is kind of like empty. Yeah, I can carry the weight of too many conflicting ideas or the weight of emotional discord or the weight of something heavy I'm trying to move. But that moment before, it's a weightless place. You can describe it other ways, but I like the word weightless. Good. Anybody else want to chime in? Simple exercise. You can do it every day if you want. You can do it to death if you want, right? Anybody?
Sensei, when
Yeah.
the Bokken comes down and settles at my stomach, sometimes it settles higher and sometimes it settles lower by about 3 inches, depending on that uptake. So I'm wondering if when you're down at the empty spot on the bottom of the strike, does it lift straight or does it lift against the belly at all?
Oh. See, no, that's an interesting one. Because what you do is sometimes you don't have a stock answer. So we're going to go cut. Now, I don't bring it in to go this way, but I also don't raise it this way. So there's a belly connection to your left hand. This allows that motion. So if I put too much weight into the raise, just a little bit, somebody grabs my wrist, I go like this and it locks up. Express elevated, express elevated. But in this position, after the cut, see, it's not against the belly, it's extended. But once that motion starts, it goes to here, then your ROC is picking up a weightless, boom, and there's the cut. Okay?
So while it looks like you're leading with the tip is coming up with the bounce. And,
well,
and we're still leading from
yeah.
the lower hand. Is that correct?
Well, one of the ways that we explained it earlier, there's ki, there's ken, and there's tai. Ki as in ki, ken as in sword, and tai as in body. See, really what happens is there's movement at the level of ki. There's always this movement. And that movement, you know, has ground to it. That moves first. Now, the body moves second. There's some body movement, but off of that motion, the sword moves first. The sword moves before the body. Ki. See that?
Yeah.
Upbeat from ground is always going on.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then when it comes back, you're sitting into the back foot,
We're sitting what?
into the back foot when it comes up.
It depends, you know, this is kind of individual, okay? For example, for me, I actually raise the heel. Okay, now, there's that movement of the ki, ground, up, express elevator. But, see, most people see this, the power of it, as top to bottom. But really what it is the power is coming up from under. Okay, so I kind of raise the heel. And I don't drop the weight when I'm doing that. Just like the sword moves after there's that beat, boom. Now there's also then the express elevator down or the trapdoor. See, that and that are always going on, the up down. Okay? First motion, and I go, there's ki. Now I move my body to move the sword. Now there's some body in the raise, but no, the sword moves first. Now I'm going to set and move the sword with the body. No. Boom. Ki, both up and down. Yeah. Now the body, boom, fills in. I actually go up on that back heel as I'm raising without standing up too high. Then there's that motion. Okay. Now that motion here is not stopping the sword. Or, okay, I'm going to try to make it, get that vibration there. It's going this way. That vibration is in your core. What you kind of see is movement of the sword. See this? That's kind of your core, isn't it? Now, movement of the ki is out there, but I'm part of the ki. It's not body quite yet. Because what I'm doing is, okay, if you look at the radical for understand in Japanese, wakaru, it has a sword radical as part of it. Sword represents mind. Ki moves first. Then mind. All right. It's a more advanced cut. See, if you try that too quick, you just wind up flailing out there. But really, boom. The movement of the ki is both up and down. From up is gut, ground. But the power for the gut comes here and then. It doesn't go top to bottom. It goes bottom to top to bottom. So I kind of raise a little without losing my balance. Just that back heel goes up about an inch or so. Boom. Other than that, I'm here kind of putting my weight into the cut. But you can experiment, for example, right here with the cut, the heel goes up. They both work. But I should be balanced and put my weight into the cut. But right here, that back heel's going up, meaning the power is coming from underneath. Okay.
Thank you. I knew you were doing something different than I was used to, but I couldn't see it. So thank you very much.
Well, it's you know, it works with the heel going down as you cut. It also works with the heel coming up. Major thing is it just depends on, gee. Okay. Anybody else with a question? Or? So that's just a basic shortcut. You get a consistency between the movement of the ki and the sword kind of going that way, and the body following a consistent pattern for the moment. Ki, Ken, Tai. Then after that, everything kind of explodes through your core. Boom. Boom. Now, if something's off, what I find is real interesting is I'll just intentionally do things like do a sword cut. And I'll tighten my jaw, throws the whole thing off. Or I'll tighten my ankles. So loose, easy. Now, you know, I'm not 100% relaxed, but I try to go in that direction. But most people don't realize they carry a lot of tension in their neck and their jaw. And then it looks like that. Right. So sometimes you can play games that way. You can get your basic cut. And you just sort of research a bit, like tighten something. Tighten your left shoulder, see what happens to it. And then do it a couple times, relaxing that. Toshima Sensei was, you know, somebody one time during somebody was kind of doing something, their joints popped, which does happen. It happens to me more than now than it used to, okay? And so Toshima Sensei just started moving this way. And every time he moved, something popped. He knew where almost everything in his body was, where there was tension. And you know, we thought it was kind of funny because he could just crack you up. He was kind of doing that, all of a sudden, they pop, 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 pop. I'm not that good. So, but you know, I play games sometimes when I'm doing that cut, but I'll intentionally tighten something. And just see what effects that you know, what tension does anywhere on that cut. And you know, the other thing is the rest of the cut stays exactly the same except for what's tight. Then you go back and relax that area, and the rest of the cut stays exactly the same, except you relax that area of tension. And that's also, you learn a lot that way. Because you know, you're going to do a technique, but you don't know it, the shoulder's tight, it's going to throw the whole flow off. You don't know it when you're trying to do a movement, but your jaw's locked, or your neck's locked. Okay. So that's one way of kind of researching. Okay. Anybody before we move on? Okay. So I'm kind of doing this because we're going to do a little bit. I've read articles, you know, as you get older, for example, you exercise for hours. You know. But as you get older, surprisingly, what one school of thought says, you do short bursts of, you know, the term is all out. Okay. Now, for example, here, you know, I'm just moving with the staff and I'm holding something shorter because if you start to copy me, then you pick up a regular length thing and you smash a lamp or a priceless painting on the wall. That's not cool. But boom, 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 boom. Well, what do I do? I check my pulse rate. Right? Then I go again. Boom, 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 boom. Noticing the heart rate increases. And so instead of kind of going like this, I'm doing short bursts of. Basically, as best I can say is all out. Now this is kind of light, so maybe, for example, if I added something a little longer. For example, this is pretty light, but it's longer. Okay. And then the pulse rate increases. Short bursts. You know, the ability, well, I can't go all out that way without the movement that well. You work up to it. If I say, oh, I gotta do this for another 15 seconds, it's not all out anymore. Fire water changes. And the pulse rate started to climb a bit. Okay, so you know, I recommend if you're going to do that, do something shorter, lighter. Now, if you don't feel you can do that, movement number 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, and 30. All the changes I'm doing are in that last 10 movements of the 30 movement set. Okay, let's do that so you can do that. And then you sort of let it go. Pulse rate is kind of, it's beating. I'm going for short bursts and going as best I can, all out. If I start to go, I'm going to take a rest, I take a rest. But that all out place, I can do that with this or something shorter. I'm not going to, hopefully, a bad day, I could smash something priceless. But I don't, so watch your surroundings. But the pulse rate is up there. Yeah. Now, this one, and I alternate that because I'm getting the pulse rate up, but you know, we're so sedentary now, largely because of the pandemic. I do the Tai Chi which helps, but this is something that I've started doing. All right, so right here, for example, and you know, toes turn out. This is, you got to turn them out a little bit more, which means right here, for example, hips open. Okay, heels touch. Now, this motion, we go all the way down. On the way up, I change, go all the way down on the other side. And again, I will do butt boom. This kind of gets the lower body into that. Get my balance here. I get the balance, I start to get the beat a little bit more. I don't do it like a crazy person. Body's gonna stop, I stop. But it starts to keep the heartbeat going, doesn't it? Now, I'm back to a more short intensity bursts. Watch out for your room. Don't destroy something that you'll regret. Boom, boom, boom. Oh. Short burst. And maybe I'll go back to this for a little bit and alternate. We'll do it slow, you don't have to do it like a medium. But here I'm using my own body weight because the holding is not very heavy at all. So it's kind of a workout for the lower body. I start to kind of go, okay, I'll stop. Rest for just a little bit, and boom, go back to the full intensity if I can. Boom. I'm gonna do, yes. See the short bursts. And here, you know, I'm not gonna hurt myself. If I overdo the squats, I probably will do something. So I just, we're gonna alternate. Short bursts, short bursts. But when you're in it, it's all out. And you know what I might do now? Pulse rate is a pretty good rate. Might just go back and now the pulse rate is high enough. Boom. It's fine. Keeps the pulse rate up a bit. It's not full intensity. Okay. You can do that longer. So that's a pattern I do. You know, we're indoors, pandemic, Omicron. You want to go out and go to a gym, that's maybe not so good, you know. But there seems to be very sedentary. And so for me, you know, once I've done a little bit, then those short bursts of, well, I mean, you could argue Jackal's not really all out. It's, you know, it's good enough for me. I read a little bit about, you know, Stephen Curry, and what they have him do is bursts of very intense movement that he'd be doing in a game. It can be shooting exercises or lateral drills or whatever it is until his heartbeat gets to a certain level. And then what they do, they have him rest, and then they check the recovery beat. He runs probably more than anybody else in the league. Right now, he's not doing much, but it's all yin yang. And right now, he's kind of in a downtime. It's okay. We all hit it. But, you know, you take your pulse after it's gone to a certain level. Rest for 2-3 minutes. Take the pulse again, and you check and see the pulse recovery rate. Okay, now I'm not up on the current medical stuff, but you know, yeah, if you're in pretty good shape, what happens is that your pulse rate recovers back to more of a norm for you faster than if you're coming. Okay, so I think Sensei spent a lot of time in study, but it was very intense study. And I think, you know, as he got older, obviously, you know, was he going to swing the sword 3,000 times? I don't know. My sense, short bursts, just get the energy kind of moving. Recover, settle, easy, open, short bursts. And, you know, that's something that I think is, as Aikido is age, you know, we've got to kind of get the tricks of the trade, so to speak. I mean, if Steph Curry goes out, he runs 20 miles every day, he'll be in great shape to run a marathon, but he won't be able to function in a basketball team. So he uses the drills in a way, and he also has coaches say, okay, you're going to do this and do that. And they record this and that. And they kind of do all that. We don't have that unless you have somebody that's going to spot for you. Before we go, anybody on that last thing about, you know, just, you know, what you might do, you know, if you, this is not designed to be, see, I don't view it as exercise. For me, it's kind of cleansing to go all out. Even if it's just, you know, inside me with a bamboo staff, it's all out. You know, and you know the squats are something that I don't do a lot of, but you know I've started incorporating because I kind of want to just, you know, the up down of the legs is kind of like, you know, the hammer going this way, but you're timing and bringing your center into that, so it's a little bit like, you know, you're forcing yourself to be a pretty cool rice cake. Anybody before we go? I have to post it, but San Jose State is about to start. And so it's going to be, I'll still be doing the Wednesday in-person class, but I'm going to kind of make Mondays my San Jose State day. I teach Monday, Wednesday there, but 8:30 to 10:30, two classes. But I got to do office hours. So I was thinking about putting the office hours right after my Monday classes. And so it would be hard to get back here and all of a sudden teach a new class, but we're thinking about expanding and doing an evening. So switching the Monday noon to a Monday evening class. We may lose people because, again, schedules are schedules, okay? But we may also gain some people that can't make the news, okay? So that's what I'm kind of looking at. So my tentative thought, which I'll put out, is, and it's going to be good for some of you, and it's going to be okay for some of you, it's going to be not so good for some of you, but 7:30 to 8:30. We make it too late, then there's too much other stuff, especially a long day at work. At 7:30, you might want to get up and move and get your energy flowing and settle and find your center, whatever it is that we're looking at. So we'll put an announcement of my tentative at this time thought is next week, starting Next week on Monday, we won't be doing the noon. We'll be doing the 7:30, 8:30 p.m. Okay. Okay. Any questions, observations before we go? Again, easy on those squats.
Sensei,
Yeah.
oh, sorry to interrupt. I appreciate you sharing that with me because I noticed I'm 44 now as I get older, and I'm trying to balance, work life with how much I'm supposed to be exercising and all that. It gets really difficult, but this seems to get a little bit of everything, right?
Yeah.
So,
Well, when if I'm just going to drag and kind of do some movements just because I think I should do them, I don't get any energy.
oh, okay.
And on the other hand, I say I'm going to go out there and I'm going to do an hour bicycle ride every day, which probably would be good. I just don't seem to have the time to do that. But
Yeah.
I can, do 20, 30 minutes of what I was doing here. I mean, that gets my pulse rate up. I check my recovery time about once a week, just to see where it is. And more than anything else, it's kind of like, okay, it's kind of liberating to do that because I do that except that's going on. Well, take a little time for yourself. I recommend using something shorter than your regular Joe, unless of course you just want to do it outside, because I don't want anybody to smash anything doing that. I have a certain amount of control, but I don't use real long staffs when I do it.
Mhm.
Okay. And then, the Bokken work at the end, Bruce Lee, he kind of wrote his diary of, his training. He said, oh, train in the activity. Okay. So he would, short, intense bursts, short, intense bursts, short, intense bursts. Rest is good. Okay. Don't just drift or get lazy, but rest is part of it. But short, intense bursts. And then at the end, do your endurance work. Okay. So if you kind of can start out with the movement of the staff and you start to add some sort of lower body stuff. Okay, if I had an exercycle, I just might just do the exercycle in here. But, I kind of like the squats because I got to find my balance in that up-down beat. And I'm not going to overdo it. But, short bursts of this and short bursts of this and short bursts of this, that I can do. And then, the endurance work at the end, I've got this pulse rate up, then I'll kind of work on the sort. Okay. It's hard for me to get the pulse rate up just with doing that, but that's what I've been experimenting with. And the results have been so far so good. Anybody else? Okay. Thank you for tuning in.
Thank you.
Thank you,
And
sir.
we'll see you on Wednesday.